3:14 in the morning. That was the time glowing in red on the heart monitor next to my face. I was sitting in a hard plastic chair that smelled like cheap bleach and old coffee. I was holding my wife Sarah's hand. Her fingers were freezing cold. She had just survived a 10-hour emergency open-heart surgery. The only sound in the room was the slow and terrifying beep of the machine breathing for her. Every time it beeped, I held my breath, hoping the next beep would come. Then my phone lit up in the dark. It was an email, not from family asking if Sarah was alive. It was from my boss, Preston Vance. The subject line read, "Immediate termination." He fired me while I was watching my wife fight for her life. The email said I was too distracted by my personal issues. It said the company needed people who were fully committed, and that my recent lack of focus was a liability. "Business is business," he wrote. I did not cry. I did not throw my phone at the wall. I did not type out a desperate reply begging him to let me keep my health insurance. I just sat there in the dark and listened to the steady beep of Sarah's monitor. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and I actually smiled. Because Preston Vance, the man who just threw me away to save a few pennies, had absolutely no idea what he had just done. He thought he was cutting dead weight to make his quarterly report look better. He did not know he had just unplugged the life support on his own $50 million empire. Welcome back to Dad's Silent Revenge. Grab a snack, get comfortable, and remember the golden rule. If you push a quiet man far enough, he will not push back. He will just remove the floor beneath you. If you like stories where loyalty is earned and arrogance gets exactly what it deserves, hit subscribe. You are going to love this one. Let me tell you about Apex Logistics. It was a massive freight and shipping company that moved millions of dollars in cargo every single day. And the man sitting at the top of that empire was Preston Vance. Preston did not build the company. His father did. Preston just inherited the massive corner office, the custom Italian suits, and a fundamental belief that anyone who worked for a paycheck was simply a number on a spreadsheet. While we worked late on weekends, Preston was busy buying his third vacation home in Aspen. He was the kind of boss who would loudly complain about the cost of office coffee while wearing a watch that cost more than my entire house. I was his lead systems architect. My name is Arthur. I did not grow up with a trust fund or a safety net. I grew up in a neighborhood where if you wanted to eat meat, you had to hope it was on sale or close to expiring. I learned to code on a garbage desktop computer I pulled out of a dumpster behind a local school. I spent months rebuilding it piece by piece in my bedroom. I clawed my way out of poverty, and I brought that same desperate, hungry work ethic to Apex Logistics. For 5 long years, I gave them everything I had. I missed my own wedding anniversary to fix server crashes in the middle of the night. I worked 80-hour weeks without complaining because I thought loyalty was a real thing. I personally built the automated routing system that cut their delivery delays by 40%. They called it the core engine. It was the digital brain of the entire operation. Without my code, trucks would not know where to go, warehouses would not know what to load, and millions of dollars of freight would just sit in the dark, rotting away. I thought my hard work meant I was safe. I thought it meant I had value as a human being. I blindly believed the sacrifices I made for the company would buy me protection when life eventually got hard. But I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong. Everything shattered on a regular Tuesday evening. I had just walked through the front door after a brutal 14-hour shift at the Apex data center. I was exhausted but looking forward to eating dinner with Sarah. Instead, I found her lying on the kitchen floor. She was struggling to breathe and clutching her chest. The color had completely drained from her face. I dropped my bag and called an ambulance. That was the moment my entire world stopped spinning and started falling. The doctors called it sudden congestive heart failure. Out of nowhere. One day we were planning our summer vacation, and the next day I was sitting in a freezing hospital corridor signing consent forms for emergency open-heart surgery. The next 3 weeks were a blur of screaming ambulance, sirens, sterile waiting rooms, and doctors speaking in voices that were way too calm. Sarah needed a transplant, followed by specialized round-the-clock care. Then came the second nightmare. The medical bills. They started piling up like bricks on my chest. Hundreds of thousands of dollars just to keep my wife breathing. And to make it infinitely worse, Preston had recently switched the company health insurance to a high-deductible bargain plan to save overhead costs. He wanted to boost his annual bonus, so he stripped away our safety net. The new insurance company was fighting us on every single pill, every single scan, and every single night Sarah spent in the intensive care unit. I was drowning in debt. I could not abandon my wife. But I absolutely could not lose my income. So I did what desperate men do. I worked from the hospital. I sat in that miserable plastic chair with my laptop balanced on my knees, managing Apex servers while Sarah slept. I did not miss a single deadline. I answered emails, I fixed bugs, and I kept Preston's precious system running smoothly. I thought he would understand. I thought he would see my dedication and give me a little grace. But Preston did not care about my wife. He only cared about control. To Preston, my physical absence was a direct insult to his authority. He liked seeing his employees sitting at their desks under the harsh office lights. It made him feel powerful. It did not matter that I was hitting every single target and keeping his delivery system flawless. He hated that he could not walk past my cubicle and watch me work. He called my direct manager and complained that I was setting a bad example for the rest of the team. He actually said my dying wife was becoming a corporate distraction. That brings us back to 3:14 in the morning. The termination email. He fired me with the push of a button while I sat in the intensive care unit watching Sarah breathe. He revoked my system access before I even had the chance to finish reading his cold message. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about corporate discipline. He thought he held all the power, and I was just another disposable worker. If I were a normal employee, I would have been completely destroyed. I would have been crushed under the massive weight of the hospital bills with no way out. But here is the beautiful secret Preston did not know, because Preston never actually read the contracts he signed. 5 years ago, when I built the core engine that ran his entire company, Preston was too cheap to pay me a proper development bonus. He also wanted to avoid paying corporate taxes on internal software creation. So to cut corners, he had human resources draft a separate independent contractor agreement just for that specific software. He thought he was being a financial genius, saving a few bucks. But by classifying me as an external contractor, the intellectual property rights did not belong to Apex Logistics. They belonged to me. Apex was only leasing the license to use my software, and that license had to be renewed annually. Preston had just fired the only man who owned the digital brain of his company. The expiration date was exactly 3 days after my termination. If I still worked there, I would have just logged into the system, clicked renew, and gone about my day. But Preston had just fired me and locked me out of the company network. I did not call human resources to complain. I did not send Preston a warning message. I just forwarded his termination email to my lawyer with a very simple request. I told him to draft the legal notice. Monday morning arrived, 9 o'clock straight. The software license officially expired. I was not there to see the chaos, but I heard all about it later from a buddy in the tech department. At 9:01, every single routing screen in all 14 Apex warehouses went completely black. Then, a simple error message popped up on hundreds of monitors across the country. License expired, please contact administrator. The impact was instant and catastrophic. Thousands of delivery trucks suddenly lost their routing coordinates. Automated sorting belts stopped moving. Millions of dollars in perishable goods were just sitting on loading docks, slowly rotting in the morning heat. The entire logistics network was completely paralyzed in a matter of seconds. The warehouse managers started screaming at the technical support team, but there was absolutely nothing they could do. The core engine was locked down tight. At 9:15, my phone rang. It was Preston. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I just sat there holding Sarah's hand, listening to the calm beep of her heart monitor. At 9:30, he called again, then again at 9:45. He was panicking. Every single hour the system stayed down, Apex Logistics was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Preston was bleeding money, and he finally realized that he had handed the knife to the man he just tried to destroy. By 10 o'clock, my lawyer officially served Apex Logistics with a cease and desist order, demanding they stop attempting to bypass my proprietary software. The trap was sprung. At 11 o'clock in the morning, Preston did not call again. Instead, he showed up in person. I had told my lawyer to text him my exact location. I wanted him to see exactly where I was when he sent that email. I walked down to the hospital lobby cafeteria to meet him. Preston was standing by the cheap coffee machines, looking entirely out of place. His face was pale, and he was sweating through his expensive tailored suit. He looked like a man who just realized he stepped on a hidden landmine and finally heard the loud click under his shoe. "Arthur," he said, breathing heavy and trying to put on his fake executive smile. "There has been a massive misunderstanding. The system is down and my tech guys cannot get past your security wall. We need you to fix it right now. I will reinstate your job immediately. I will even give you a 10% raise and forget this whole thing ever happened. Let us just be professionals and fix this mess before it gets worse." I looked at him. I looked at the cold sweat dripping down his forehead. "I do not work for you, Preston," I replied calmly. "You fired me in the middle of the night. You said business is business." His fake smile dropped completely. He took a step forward, trying to use his height to intimidate me. "Stop playing games, Arthur. Turn the servers back on right now. You are destroying my company. I have millions in cargo rotting on the docks, and my biggest clients are threatening to walk away." "I am not doing anything," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "You are trying to operate unlicensed proprietary software. That is a federal crime. My lawyer made that very clear." Preston reached into his jacket pocket with shaking hands and pulled out his leather checkbook. "How much?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Name your price for the license. 50 grand. 100 grand. I will write the check right now." I looked at the piece of paper trembling in his sweaty hand. 100 grand. He honestly thought 100 grand would magically erase the fact that he tried to ruin my life while my wife was dying. I looked him dead in the eyes, and I let the heavy silence hang between us for a long moment. "My wife's medical bills are currently sitting at $450,000, I said. My voice was barely above a whisper, but it was cold enough to freeze water. "The trauma you caused my family by firing me in the intensive care unit costs exactly $5 million. And on top of that, I want 20% equity in Apex Logistics, non-dilutable. That way I can sit on the board of directors and make absolutely sure you never ever fire a man while his family is suffering again." Preston's jaw literally hit the floor. His eyes went wide with absolute shock, and then quickly turned red with intense anger. "Are you completely insane?" he hissed at me. $5 million and 20% of my company. I will sue you into the ground, Arthur. I will hire the best corporate lawyers in the entire state, and I will personally ruin you." I did not blink. I did not step back. I just leaned in a little closer so he could hear exactly how calm I was. "Preston, you are losing $400,000 every single hour right now. By the time your expensive lawyers even finish drafting the initial paperwork, Apex will be completely bankrupt. Your logistics network is dead. Your biggest clients will leave, and your father's proud legacy will become a massive joke on Wall Street. You do not have months to fight me in court. You barely have hours." I checked my cheap watch. "You have exactly 1 hour to sign the transfer documents my lawyer just emailed to your legal team," I told him. "Sign them and pay the fee, or I walk back upstairs to hold my wife's hand, and you walk straight into unemployment. The choice is entirely yours." I turned my back on him and walked toward the hospital elevators. I did not look back. I could hear Preston calling my name. He was pleading now. His voice was completely broken, and it echoed loudly in the hospital lobby. "Arthur, wait please. Let us just sit down and talk about this." But I kept walking. I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors slowly slide shut, completely cutting off the sight of the arrogant CEO who thought he owned my life. I rode the elevator back up to the intensive care unit. I walked back into Sarah's room and sat down in the exact same plastic chair. I held her hand again. It felt a little bit warmer this time. I watched the clock on the wall. The second hand moved painfully slow. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I knew exactly what was happening at the Apex headquarters right then. Preston was screaming at his corporate lawyers, demanding a miracle. The lawyers were looking at my contract, telling him there was absolutely no way out. The board of directors was panicking as the company lost money by the minute. Preston had no other options left on the table. At 45 minutes past the hour, my phone buzzed on my lap. It was a text message from my lawyer. It contained exactly 3 sentences. "The documents are signed. The funds are currently being wired to your account. You are now a 20% owner of Apex Logistics." I let out a heavy breath that felt like I had been holding it for 5 entire years. The war was officially over. Preston Vance had surrendered. The $5 million was already sitting safely in my bank account, completely wiping out every single medical bill and securing our future forever. I did not jump up and cheer. I did not celebrate. I just leaned my head against the edge of Sarah's bed and closed my eyes. I listened to the steady rhythm of her heart monitor. For the first time in weeks, the sound did not scare me anymore. Sarah fully recovered 6 months later. We moved her out of that crowded hospital and into the best private cardiac facility in the entire state. The doctors there were world-class, and they gave her the exact care she needed without ever rushing her out the door. The day she was finally discharged, I walked down to the billing department. The woman behind the desk handed me a massive stack of papers showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt. I did not argue with her. I did not beg for a payment plan or ask for financial assistance. I just took out my checkbook, wrote a single check, and paid every single bill in full right there on the spot. Walking out of that hospital with my wife was the greatest feeling I have ever experienced. We went back to a home that was finally peaceful. We did not have to worry about the winter heating bill anymore. We did not have to check our bank account balance before buying groceries. The suffocating weight of poverty that I had carried on my heavy shoulders since I was a little boy was finally completely gone. The $5 million bought us the ultimate luxury. It bought us time and peace of mind. I never went back to the Apex Logistics office to work a regular shift. I absolutely did not need to. As a major shareholder with 20% equity, I started receiving a very generous dividend check every single quarter. My code continued to run the logistics network perfectly, but now it was working for me instead of just exploiting my labor. The board of directors formally offered me an executive position with a fancy corner office, but I politely turned them down. I told them my only priority was spending time with my wife and making up for all the years I lost working 80-hour weeks for ungrateful people. I only attended the quarterly board meetings, and every time I walked into that massive glass conference room, the entire energy of the room immediately shifted. Preston Vance is still the chief executive officer of Apex Logistics, but he is a complete shell of the man he used to be. He knows very well that he works for me now. Every single time I walk into the quarterly board meetings, Preston refuses to make direct eye contact with me. He sits at the head of the massive mahogany table, but everyone in the room knows exactly who actually holds the real power. Before I forced him to sign that contract, Preston used to run those executive meetings like a ruthless dictator. He would loudly shout down the financial officers and fire people right on the spot just for asking the wrong questions. Now he has to read his corporate reports quietly and respectfully wait for my approval. Every time he wants to make a major corporate decision or authorize a large company expense, he has to slide the formal folder across the table and carefully watch me read it. I never yell at him. I never mock him in front of the other wealthy board members. That is absolutely not my style. True power does not ever need to be loud. Sometimes I just let the heavy silence stretch out for 2 or 3 entire minutes while I slowly flip through the pages of his business proposals. I watch him sweat nervously in his expensive tailored Italian suits. I watch his hands tremble slightly as he waits for my final verdict. During one specific meeting last year, Preston actually tried to propose cutting the employee health insurance plan again to boost the quarterly profit margins. He nervously said it was a necessary business move. I simply looked up from the paperwork and stared directly at him. I did not say a single word. The entire room went completely dead silent. Preston swallowed hard, quickly grabbed the folder back from the table, and immediately apologized to the board. He quietly said he would find the budget cut somewhere else. That was the exact moment he fully realized the quiet guy he tried to throw away was the one permanently holding his leash. Sitting on that board of directors gave me a very unique opportunity. I did not just want to constantly punish Preston. I wanted to completely dismantle the toxic corporate culture that allowed a man like him to thrive in the first place. I remembered exactly what it felt like to be a regular employee, terrified of losing my job just because my wife got sick. I promised myself I would never let another Apex worker feel that same terrifying desperation. During the annual corporate policy review meeting, I introduced a massive structural change. I proposed a mandatory paid family leave program and a complete overhaul of the company health insurance. I demanded that the lowest paid warehouse workers receive the exact same premium medical coverage as the wealthy executives sitting in that very room. The chief financial officer immediately protested. He said the enormous cost would severely hurt our annual shareholder dividends. I looked around the room at these rich men who had never worried about paying a medical bill in their entire lives. I quietly reminded them that without the warehouse workers moving the heavy boxes and the engineers writing the complex code, their massive corporate dividends would not even exist. I told them we were going to approve the new employee benefits package today, or I would personally initiate a full financial audit of every single executive expense account from the last 5 entire years. The financial officer slowly closed his laptop. Nobody else in the room said another word. The vote passed unanimously right there on the spot. Later that week, Human Resources sent out the company-wide email announcing the new premium medical benefits and the expanded paid time off. I received dozens of quiet thank you messages from regular workers I used to sit next to in the cramped break rooms. They did not know all the specific details of what happened behind those closed corporate doors. They just knew the nightmare was finally over. I used my silent power to build a permanent shield for the people who actually kept the empire running. Looking back at my younger self, I sometimes feel a deep sense of pity. I was so incredibly naive. I actually believed the corporate lies they fed us during those long orientation meetings. They always loved to use the exact same word. "We are a family here at Apex Logistics," they would say with wide, convincing smiles. But the hard truth is that a real family does not ever fire you in the middle of the night just because your wife is fighting for her life in a hospital bed. Corporate loyalty is the most dangerous illusion a working man can ever believe. It is a completely one-sided street designed exclusively to extract your maximum effort for their maximum profit. They want you to give them your late nights, your early mornings, and your precious weekends. They want you to sacrifice your personal relationships and your mental health for the greater good of the company. But the very second you become inconvenient to their quarterly profit margins, they will cut you loose without a single drop of hesitation. I learned that painful lesson the hard way while sitting in a cold intensive care unit. But that painful lesson is exactly what finally set me completely free. I stopped waiting for rich men to recognize my human value, and I started leveraging the real power I already held in my own two hands. I realized that the people at the very top only understand one single language. They do not understand hard work. They do not understand personal sacrifice. They only understand leverage. If you are giving your absolute best to a company that views you as a completely disposable resource, you are not being a dedicated worker. You are just being willfully blind. You are actively handing them the exact knife they will eventually use to stab you in the back. You have to stop begging for their respect and start building your own undeniable leverage. Because when the dark days finally arrive, leverage is the absolute only thing that will ever save you. Most people believe that when you are being mistreated, you have to shout. They think that anger is only real if it is loud and aggressive. They believe you have to storm into the office and demand justice right then and there. But I have learned that the loudest person in the room is usually the one with the least amount of real control. True power is quiet. True power is patient. True power is the ability to sit in a room full of people who hate you and say absolutely nothing because you already know how the story ends. My silence during that first week was my greatest weapon. If I had called Preston and screamed at him when I received that email, he would have known I was emotional. He would have known I was desperate. He would have been prepared for my attack. But by staying completely silent, I left him alone with his own arrogance. I allowed him to believe he had won. And while he was busy celebrating his hollow victory, I was quietly preparing the move that would eventually dismantle his entire world. When you are in a situation where you feel powerless, the best thing you can do is stop talking. Stop explaining your value to people who have already decided you do not have any. Stop trying to convince a monster to be human. Instead, you must go inward and find the one thing they cannot survive without. Every company has a core engine. Every bully has a hidden weakness. Every system has a single gear that holds everything together. Your job is to find that gear and keep your hands on it. Do not tell them you have it. Do not threaten to use it. Just wait. Wait for the moment they think they have finally crushed you. Wait for the moment they turn their back on you because they think you are no longer a threat. That is when your silence becomes currency. That is when you spend it. Because the world is full of loud men who lose everything and quiet men who eventually own the whole building. A year has passed since the day Preston Vance tried to destroy my life. Sarah is now completely healthy and her laughter fills our home every single morning. We spend our days doing the simple things we used to dream about when we were broke. We take long walks in the park, we cook dinner together without checking the time, and we finally have the freedom to just be present for each other. The $5 million is still sitting in various investment accounts, providing us with a safety net that I never thought possible for a boy who grew up in a dumpster neighborhood. Sometimes I sit in my home office and look at that old desktop computer I rebuilt as a teenager. It reminds me that my value never came from a fancy title or a corporate paycheck. It came from my own mind and my own refusal to give up when things got dark. I realized that the greatest form of revenge was not the money or the equity or the look on Preston's face when he lost. The greatest revenge was the quiet life I built after the war was over. One afternoon, Sarah and I went back to the hospital for her final checkup. As we were leaving, we heard a loud metallic sound echoing through the hallway. It was the sound of a patient ringing the victory bell to symbolize the end of their treatment. Sarah stopped and looked at me with tears in her eyes. We both knew exactly what that sound meant. It meant another family had survived the nightmare. It meant another person had fought back and won. I realized then that I did not just win for myself. I won for every single person who has ever been treated like a disposable part in a cold corporate machine. I won for every father who has had to choose between his job and his family. I won for every worker who was told that business is business by a man who has never known a day of real struggle. The echo of that bell was the sound of a chapter finally closing. I was no longer a victim of the system. I was the master of my own destiny. As we reach the end of this story, I want you to take a long, hard look at your own life. Many of you listening right now are exactly where I used to be. You are the first one in the office and the last one to leave. You are the person everyone calls when things go wrong because they know you will stay up all night to fix it. You are loyal, you are hardworking, and you believe that if you just give a little more, the people at the top will finally see your worth. But I am here to tell you the truth that nobody else will. If you are in a room where they only value you when you are quiet, then your silence is not a sign of respect. It is your most valuable currency. Do not waste it on people who would not bleed for you. Do not give your life to a company that would have your job posted on the internet before your funeral is even over. Your loyalty is a gift, and you should only give it to those who have earned it through their own actions. Some people think kindness is a weakness. They mistake your patience for surrender and your silence for fear. Let them think that. Let them believe they have the upper hand while you are quietly building your own leverage. Because when the time finally comes and the world tries to push you down, you will not need to scream. You will just need to step aside and let their own arrogance destroy them. If this story hit you in the chest, or if you have ever been treated like you were disposable by someone like Preston Vance, I want you to drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Let us remind each other that we are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. And if you want more stories where the quiet ones finally win and the arrogant ones finally lose, then hit that subscribe button. Thank you for sitting with me today. Remember to spend your silence wisely. Keep your hands on the gear and wait for your moment. I will see you in the next one.